When you've got a bold vision and a revolutionary goal, like FFI's goal of moving the US towards a country where everyone has a fair shot at well-being, how do you make it real? So over the last 15 years, FFI has combined movement building and systems change into three interdependent strategies that get stuff done in ways that stick. First, we recognize that this is all about people and influence, so you identify and connect influencers, people we call first movers, who are going to move first into a new idea or a new space, who share your purpose really deeply, and you partner with them to use that influence in ways that make sense for them when there is a moment of opportunity where things are getting shaken up and there is a need to put things back together differently. So if these are folks that have a lot of influence over how people see problems and identify solutions, then you partner with them to reframe. And for us, it's been about using well-being equity in a reframing and bringing it to national audiences. And if these are folks that are in positions to actually shift policy, to shift practice, then it is about partnering with them to make that reframing real in communities, in systems. And that does three things. One, it obviously, all these things help people see and do differently so that things actually begin to change. The other is that it is the hard work of cracking something open, and other people can fill in behind that, and you can build momentum, and you're constantly building movement. And the third thing, particularly for the partnering to make the reframing real in communities, it defangs doubt. It makes it much less possible for folks to say, that reframing, that sounds so great, but it would never happen. When you have shown that it is real in communities, you are taking that argument away, and you're saying, absolutely, look, we're doing it in Missouri, and we're doing it in Texas, and we're doing it in California, and we're doing it in Massachusetts, and we're doing it in New York, and it absolutely can be done. And so we need to do more of it. It won't look the same in all these different places, but we can do it. So let's take a look at how this has played out for FFI in our work in the built environment. Early in the Biden administration, when there was an infrastructure act that was looking likely to pass, we recognized that the built environment has a lot of impact on people's access to well-being. And the Infrastructure Act was an opportunity where there was going to be huge, huge change in the field, a lot of money, a lot of shifts, a lot of policy changes. And so there was a moment for things to get a lot better or a lot worse, and we wanted to be in there to make things, to help inform how things could be made a lot better. And we ended up in the conversations with someone who we've known for a long time, who has a lot of influence in the field of infrastructure and policy and a lot of connections in those and related fields. And we began to just explore together what it would mean for well-being to be a design principle for infrastructure investment. And over the course of a year, we wrote two articles that ended up being published in Planning Magazine, the journal of record for folks in the field of planning and related fields. But along the way, we met with and socialized these ideas as we were developing them with dozens and dozens of other influential people in the field. So that by the time those articles came out, there was already momentum and interest in those ideas. And then on the other side of those articles going out, we had more meetings and webinars and we taught classes and we just really worked to get the idea out there. And the ideas hopscotch, and somebody sent them to somebody and somebody sent them to somebody, and they ended up at the US Census Bureau, where they were thinking about how do we think about well-being measures, not just economic measures of how we're doing as a country. And so they approached FFI around developing well-being measures. And we said, hey, we want to help you make that real in community. We want to develop tools around that for sure. But there's this moment of opportunity around infrastructure and infrastructure investment. And we want to can we start out by focusing on this idea of infrastructure planning and well-being? And they said, yes, make that real. And so we pulled together folks that we had talked to in coming up with all these ideas and socializing them, as well as other colleagues we knew. And we created a national kitchen cabinet. We didn't just go out there and make a tool. We created a national kitchen cabinet, knowing that whatever came out of this tool would be a tool. But the whole process of creating it was also an opportunity to identify other reframings and to build constituency. And that's exactly what we did. And with the kitchen cabinet, we zeroed in on this idea that actually this tool needed to focus on something really specific, which is well-being cost benefit, not just financial cost benefit for cities, for communities, as well as for the people who are in them. And that turned into this tool, this well-being insights, assets, and trade-offs tool. And then we began to implement it. We found first movers in Cleveland and Austin, Texas, and Kingston, New York, who were needing to make major investments and to inform major investments, but who said, hey, we want to be the first in the pool to do this with well-being at the center. We want to be the first to try out and to help refine this Wyatt tool. And so we worked with them to make this real around infrastructure and brownfield remediation and community planning, et cetera, using Wyatt, but along the way, surfacing more champions for this idea of well-being equity. And as we were doing that work and continuing to work with the kitchen cabinet, this idea came out that what we were doing here is preventing well-being stripping, not just wealth stripping. And we were socializing that idea as well. So it wasn't just about what was happening in Wyatt. It wasn't that we had moved past all this reframing. All of these things are happening at once. And what we've ended up with is this pool of dozens and dozens of activated, well-placed, influential champions around the country out of this initial conversation set of conversations that looked like initially they were just going to lead to an article. But it's not just that, because out of those two articles, there also were folks who had different interests from just the development of tools. They were interested in a different problem, which is the certification of planners and the accreditation of the graduate programs that train them, and the need for well-being and well-being equity to be a design principle of curriculum, of certification, of accreditation. And so we came together with them, hosted by one of our champions at MIT, and we called it the Well-Built Convening. And that activated more champions who continue in ways that don't even fit on this slide to bring well-being and well-being equity into their work on framing and as well as into their work in communities. But the sum of all of this is more activated champions. Some of these activated champions work in climate. And so over the last 2 years, they have partnered with us around how do we actually make well-being equity a design principle for how we collectively adapt to the climate emergency, how we do infrastructure differently, how we do planning differently, how we work differently when there's climate migration. And also, folks, activated champions were really interested in nature and nature-based solution and pushed us around reframing well-being as something that's not just about people at the center, but what does it actually mean if we reconsider well-being of people and the earth? All of that from an initial conversation around infrastructure. We couldn't have planned it all out this way, but we followed these three core principles and activated champions along the way and sought out opportunities and leveraged the heck out of all of them as we went along. And look where we are today.